Hello, everybody. My name is Jim Farmer. I am the festival director of Out on Film at LIDA's LGBTQ Film Festival. This is our 37th year, and we have some amazing films this year. I'm so proud of our lineup. One of the films that we are just absolutely so excited about showing is Bulletproof, a lesbian's guide to surviving the plot. We have the director, Regan Latimer. I'm going to read a brief description of the film, and then we're going to jump into some questions. Bulletproof, a lesbian's guide to surviving the plot. Filmmaker Regan Latimer takes an immersive, funny, and personal look at queer representation on television and media's power to shape how we see ourselves. Witty, fast-paced, and laced with pop culture references, Regan journeys across North America and beyond in her quest to understand the forces that influence the stories we see on our screens. Original animation and personal anecdotes are interwoven with wide-ranging conversations with television insiders, LGBTQ community advocates, and people who just love to watch TV. This is a film we all love. Please welcome Regan Latimer.
Thank you so much for having me.
We're so, I obviously any film festival watches a lot of films, but one of my programmers reached out to me and said, you have to watch this documentary. And he loved it so much. And then we tried to other people, and everybody just loves this. So thank you so much for making this, getting it out there, and also and for sending and for talking to us today.
Wow, thank you so much.
Yeah. So what made you want to make this?
It was actually, I mean, it's always been a problem, right? But then in 2016, the spring of 2016, literally just watching the shows that I love to watch, it was just one like death consecutively after another. And it just got to the point where it's like, this has to stop. What can I do? I'm a filmmaker. Maybe I can shine a spotlight on it with a documentary. So that's when the idea started, and that's when I started developing it. And then 2017 is when we started filming interviews, and here we are.
So 2016, was that sort of the peak of lesbian carnage on TV, or right when it was starting?
I would say that was the peak.
Okay.
Because with everything that happened and with the backlash that occurred because of it, suddenly there was awareness and less deaths seemed to happen. But to be fair, to have that level of carnage, there had to first be that amount of representation on screen to kill. So it's like it's always the pendulum, right? So it's like when you have more of it, you see more of it in terms of the deaths and stuff. And so then I do feel there was like a slight drop in representation, but then it was kind of like Hollywood wanted to maybe correct itself in some way, and the pendulum swung back, and now there's a lot more representation now, and not all of it is the carnage of previous seasons. So
it's nice. I remember vividly Orange is the New Black. It's always been a show that I love, and a favorite character of mine got killed unexpectedly at the end of one season. I'm like, no, that did not just happen. And it happens. Like, I mean, I'm sure you know what I'm talking about.
Absolutely. Yes. It's always, and the, part of the narrative that always seems to happen over and over is it's such a buildup, right? Of these characters to get them to a point of happiness. They would reach that happiness, and then tragedy would strike.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's the, kind of storyline that we needed to move away from, essentially. And so that's what this doc was about.
Can you talk about, as gay people, I think we all know the history. Like when I was growing up, all you saw was carnage. You saw carnage, unhappy lives. And then he moved to the AIDS period. So I grew up seeing negative portrayals. But can you sort of talk about, what that does to a young person who's questioning their own sexuality, to see the images I saw, and then to see, the images that we're talking about right now, what it does to their psyche?
Well, I think it's fair to say that media, perhaps back in our day, it was more TV. Maybe for kids now, it's more, social media, YouTube, TikTok, like that kind of thing. I don't think they're watching, shows in the same way that we did. But everything that it's your window to the world. And especially if you're in a situation where you're quite isolated, your experience of gayness is going to be what you're seeing on the screen. And if all you're seeing is unhappiness and tragedy, what does that tell you about your future?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's not positive. That said, on the other side of it, when you do see something great, that's helpful too. Like you're just absorbing everything, right? We're all sponges in that way.
It just it's feel you know, I think a lot of people, you know, especially people who are my age. I think I'm a little bit older than you are, but you know, it just sort of feels like, you know, when we see happy endings these days, we're surprised. I'm like, really? I just saw that. I mean, I remember there have been like a lot of movies of late and TV series where there are happy endings and people, but as you said, you know, there was a long history where we did not have happy endings. But okay, so when you decided to make this documentary and line up your interviews, how did you present it? Who were the first people that you reached out to talk to?
So the first people I reached out to were people in the industry, the writers, the showrunners, the actors, just to get a sense of, you know, you've seen the film, and for, you know, for those who haven't, I won't spoil anything, but we do a kind of look at essentially how storytelling on TV works. What are the different components? Why do these things keep happening? And, you know, I uncovered, I feel, you know, quite a bit of information that was new to me.
Mm-hmm.
In my understanding of, oh, okay, I see why this could keep happening. And it also then gives way to how we can do better. So that's where we started, was with the industry. But I think the most interesting part of the film for me was we talked to a media psychologist, and we talked to a therapist,
Yeah.
who really dissects and breaks down the actual like brain science behind why these portrayals are so affecting to us and what kind of impact they really do have. Like, so I personally found that so much of outside of the queer world, the reaction was, you know, it's just TV. Why are you so upset about this? But when you actually look at the science behind how our brain works, there's a reason why we're so upset about it. We're not strange. We're not weird. We're normal in being affected in this way. It affects everyone in that way. But for queer people, because there's already such a, you know, way in which we're marginalized to a various degree, it perhaps has a bigger impact on our community.
I was really intrigued, and you know, I had mixed feelings because I remember there's one particular TV executive that you're talking to, and that
Hmm.
person was talking about, I guess, the ethos of television and how you create a TV series and what has to happen and the conflict. It's like, yeah, I get that, but you know,
Mm.
you can't just routinely kill gay people all the time. You have to be at least cognizant. But when you were talking to that person, he was sort of talking about, you know, why that happens and why that has happened. What were your thoughts?
Well, it was very, I did find the way he described that very clinical,
Yeah,
and totally took all of the emotion out of it. And it's like, but
exactly.
there are other people on the end of what you are doing. Like, you're doing it in order to show them.
Yeah.
So surely their reaction should mean something and be important. But it also showed me how, I mean, I can't say it's not personal from everyone who works in TV, but for the most part, it's like, it's not personal. Those are just the characters that tend to have, you know, things happen to them in order to move, you know, main character stories forward. Like, it was all just very, this is how TV works. So it was, I got that. I understood that, but it's like, sure, well, he understands now after after the backlash he got. He understands the effect of it now, but it's like, surely that needs to come into play to understand the type of impact you are having on people. And it's not just the queer community, it's also, you know, largely women as well, the way they are portrayed, people of color. Like, it's not just singular to us, but I think we are getting to a point where there is a better understanding about impact. And
Yeah.
it can't just be, oh, they're going to love this. This is going to be really impactful. Ooh, they'll be upset about this. Now there actually is some thought about what that means.
Did you always know that you were gonna be in the film?
No,
Okay.
no. When I started, I still don't want to be in the film. I am not an on camera person.
Yeah.
The pandemic played a big part of that. I originally was, you know, when I started with Lindy, I won't give too much away of a reveal, but started with Lindy, was going to follow her life. And the point of the narrative aspect to it, like, yes, we are looking at representation, queer representation in media. But when I started, I quickly realized that was way too broad a topic.
Yeah.
So I needed to kind of narrow that down to my own experience of it, because I also didn't want to speak for other people's experiences. I can really only speak to my own, and if people can relate to that, then that's fantastic. And you know, I'm sure they bring their own experiences to it. So you know, I was always planning on having a narrative. It just wasn't necessarily going to be mine. And then the pandemic hit, and it just became more necessary in order to get the film finished, that I became a bigger part of it. But I still don't want to be in it. So
Okay.
hopefully it worked out. But yeah.
When you were editing this together, and did you, you know, you talked to a lot of people for the, did you find that it was difficult sort of you know, editing it down in terms of the right, what was, I mean, getting the right mix, and what was that process like of determining what you could use and what you couldn't use?
Yeah, it was difficult because for everyone I spoke to, especially because I was so interested in the topic, each person I spoke to for at least like an hour. So then I was, you know, having to, there were so many good parts that got cut out of the film simply because the film can't be a 3-hour extravaganza. Like I was aiming for 90, came in at an hour 45, because there is just so much to it, which is part of why I needed to create the narrative to really focus on the path we wanted to take with the film, because otherwise the topic is very, very large. So many experiences, depending on what background you come from, that I really just needed to narrow that down. So that's how I ended up being more a part of it than I ever wanted to be.
Okay. Can you sort of talk about the pendulum? The pendulum, you said that it was, you know, swinging here, but I mean, where is it now? And do you think it's there for a while?
I don't, I think it actually has been where it is for a while and is starting to swing back, especially when you look at everything that's happening in politics.
Yeah.
Without getting too specific, I mean, it's much more blatant in the US than it is in Canada, but you know, we have the same kind of politics going on here. And it's almost like the pendulum of getting towards better representation and more of it is fantastic. But then you get people saying, they're everywhere, gay people are everywhere. And it's like, but we work so hard to get there that's why the pendulum starts swinging back, because there starts to be pushback, and there is so much pushback right now. So I feel like the pendulum swung, and we are on the backward swing of that now, which is why I think we need to be so hyper vigilant about not letting it fall backwards, because we've made a lot of progress.
Yeah. I mean, this is such, you know, this is such an informative document, but it's also very, very entertaining, and we had a great time watching it. But who were your favorite interviews as part of this?
I love talking to Dr. Aiden Hirschfield, who is the media psychologist.
Yeah.
I love to Kat Barrell, who talks about, you know, her experience with the fans. Like, she has a very dedicated fan base, and so hearing about, because she hears direct from the fans exactly the impact that she's had on them. So there was a lot of positiveness to that interview, which was lovely. But there was no person that I would say, oh, that interview is horrible. They were all lovely, and everyone really wanted to talk about this topic because they, you know, recognize the importance of it. So it was lovely speaking to all of them.
One of the things I think this film does really well is, you know, talk about the connection viewers have with these characters. And, you know, a lot of times, you know, sometimes with social media, you find out spoilers ahead of time. But a lot of times when you're not on social media and you're watching it and someone dies unexpectedly, that is wretched. That is just horrible in a lot of ways. What's one example of somebody who had a favorite character die and just really had a horrible effect or traumatic effect on them?
On me personally?
Or any of the people you spoke with? But let's talk about you. What death really rattled you?
The one that really rattled me, and it's possibly because of everything that came before it, and it was the death that was like, okay, I've had enough of this, I'm going to make a documentary, we're doing something about it, was Denise on The Walking Dead. It was the longest buildup for
Yeah.
a character to reach any kind of level of happiness or awareness. And it was so quintessentially the trope of finally figuring it out and literally dying, sorry for the spoiler, but literally dying right away, and in the most gruesome, horrific way possible. Like, it could not have been worse. And it was so shocking. Like, there was just no warning. It's not like, oh, they were in a battle, you might have seen it coming. It was just out of nowhere. And I know they like their shock value, but that shocked me into making this film. So
I mean,
it was a lot.
if I remember correctly, the character was just sort of standing, and didn't an arrow just go through her head?
Yes, an arrow right in the
Hell.
back of her head and came out her eye. It's like, it couldn't be any more graphically, violently horrific than that death, frankly. So it was, yeah, that shocked me into action is what it did. Yeah.
I did not know about that. I mean, and the funny thing is, someone dies in that series every 20 minutes. And you
Sure.
gotta get used to it. But something like that, it's like, wow, that's not even
Right.
that's not even a zombie death. That's just
No, it wasn't. That was the thing. And they had also, of course, spent so much time building up these two characters towards a place where they even recognized that they were in love with each other, and then immediately took it away. It was very painful.
I can. Right. This has been well. Let me ask you. So, what is next for this film, and what is next for you?
So right now we're doing our festival run and having a great time doing that. We were just at a sold out screening in Vancouver, and the audience reception has been great. I think a lot of people, are aware of the issue and are glad to see it being, put out there in a bigger way. So hopefully we'll find a home somewhere where it can be watched beyond the festival circuit. We're in various discussions for that right now, which is very exciting. And then for me, beyond that, I want to, prior to this documentary, I was more narrative based in terms of the stuff I was creating. So I'm likely to go back. I was in the middle of developing a series when that Denise death happened. And that has been on hold. So I'll probably go back to that. And as always, my content is always queer related in some way. So yeah, people can look out for that kind of stuff.
That's great. All right. The film is Bulletproof, a lesbian's guide to surviving the plot, screening at Out on Film on Friday, October the 4th, 7 p.m. at Outfront Theater. Regan Latimer, it's been a pleasure talking to you. Thanks so much for making this film. Thanks so much for sharing it with our audiences. I'm sure they're going to love it.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having us at Out on Film.
Thank you so much.